We are working to finding new ways of cooperation between municipalities from different countries and its local civil society groups through the dialogue around best practice examples in the field of migration. This afternoon, we will have two panels where we will discuss and present with experts, city representatives, and members of active civil society initiatives from all over Europe that are already working and advocating to open up opportunities for practical, open-minded solutions which place human rights at the center of the future migration politics. After the two panels that will last around 2 hours, the first one will be moderated by me, the second one will be moderated by the city of Berlin. We will move to breakout rooms in which you as participants will be invited to bring your inputs, make questions, and put together statements that hopefully will contribute directly to the next steps of the project, and hopefully to different types of cooperations between those of you who are interested and also working directly in the topic that we're covering today. The profiles of the participants that we have this afternoon is really impressive, and we really hope that we can get you on board of the project. So we really encourage you to stay until the end. It's a long event, but we hope you find it interesting, the next hours of presentations, discussions, and participation. We have a tech host, it's my colleague Sima, who is in the background, and she's taking care today of the technical aspects of the event, so she'll make sure that your online participation throughout the event goes smoothly. And please note also that the two panels of the event and the closing plenary are going to be recorded. This was a short introduction, and I'm very happy to introduce you now to the first speakers of our first introduction panel under the title Cities for Refugees, Cooperation for a Welcoming Europe. We have Jurica Greguric from the Department for the Promotion of Human Rights and Civil Society Sector for Intercity and International Cooperation and Civil Society in the city of Zagreb. Birgit Surniden from the Head of Unit Participation in the Migration Society of the Berlin State Department of Labor, Social Services, Gender Equality, Integration, Diversity and Anti-Discrimination. Nikos Papakostas, Director of Inter Alia, a civil society organization based in Greece and with years of experience in the field of democratic participation and migration. And Christian Smith, a representative of the collective Europe Must Act and the Alliance from the Sea to the City. Thank you to the four of you for being with us this afternoon. I would like to start with you, Jurica. The case of Zagreb is a very interesting one because there was in 2021 the victory of Zagreb, Jenaš and Motsemo in the local elections, which drew on the experience of activism going back well over a decade to the administrations. And a different number of events and processes played a key role in the articulation of how activist strategies and tactics were introduced into the local government. So in this sense, it would be very interesting if you could tell us specifically in which way has this social movement brought into the city administration different practices into the field of migration and integration. So please, Jurica.
Hello, everybody. As Marta said, I'm Jurica Greguric, and you pronounced my last name very well. Congratulations. I come from the city of Zagreb, and I would like to start by saying that Croatia was in the last few years more of a transitional country. So not many people stayed in Croatia, and therefore there are a lack of national policies and action plans for migration. That was the way it was in Zagreb before, but as Marta said, in 2021 the elections, the leftist Green Party won the elections, and that opened the way for some new policies and action plans regarding migration, and that opened the way for civil society organizations to approach the city of Zagreb and to make our cooperation much better. I would say that the most integral part in our cooperation was the implementation of the action plan of the city of Zagreb for the integration of asylum seekers and persons granted international protection for 2022. And that action plan also included the persons granted temporary protection when the war in Ukraine started. Why I said that? Why I said this? Because a lot of the activities from this action plan were made in the cooperation with the civil society organizations, and a lot of them were later, how would I say this, were implemented by that civil society organizations. This action plan was funded from European Project Connection with many cities partners. That was a project that was made by the Eurocities. There were five like areas of our action plan: healthcare, education, social care, sensibilization of the local community, and employment. In all of these areas, employment is the hardest for us because it's in the jurisdiction of the state and not the city of Zagreb, but we are moving towards something smarter. There were many activities with civil society organizations in these action plans. I will tell you a few of them, which are, in my opinion, the most important. We've built a coordination for integration for City of Zagreb. The City of Zagreb didn't have a coordination for integration before this action plan. And in this coordination, there are representatives of the City of Zagreb, of course, representatives of the migrant communities in Zagreb, and representatives from the civil society organizations. This is now like a central point in the official cooperation between the civil society organizations and the sole city of Zagreb. The CSOs, I will say CSOs because I will get really boring if I continue talking about civil society organizations. The CSOs contacted the Zagreb through public call for expressing interest in the activities of the action plan. We had like around 50 activities which we did in cooperation with the CSOs. They were all really great, and we have really positive experience from this. This action plan was only for the year of 2022 because it was funded from the project Connection, which ended in the end of 2022. So we had to, because it was so positive and we did so much in this 1 year, we had to look for another solutions in the next years. So we have signed the Integrating Cities Charter. I don't know if any one of you is familiar with this, but this is like some sort of obligation for City of Zagreb that we will continue in integration activities, and that we will continue in doing policies and action plans which help the migrant communities in the city of Zagreb. So on the back of this Integrating Cities Charter, we build up a new action plan of the city of Zagreb for implementing this Integrating Cities Charter for 2023 and 2024. So this action plan was constructed by before mentioned coordination for integration. So it was the first thing that we did together, and it went on a public hearing, and the other CSOs also gave them our thoughts and some things they think it should be included in this new action plan. We tried to really implement everything that CSOs have told us, but it's not always really, it's not easy, and sometimes it's not possible, because I'm sure it's the case in every of your cities. City administration functions in one way, CSOs function in some other way, and if we don't have dialogue open-minded dialogue, we cannot agree on some things. But if we all try to look from the perspective of the other organization, then we can agree on a lot of things and do really, really great things for the migrants. I would say that what's most important for us is that sometimes we, the city of Zagreb, don't have practical view what happens on the street and what happens with the migrant organizations in Zagreb. And this is the field where CSOs are so important for us, because they tell us you did this wrong, because you think it's the right thing, but migrants said to us that it doesn't function. And so we really tried to make our policies and our new action plan regarding that. So it's really practical and it's really functional, and it's not just something written on the paper that we can show that we've done, but it really helps people, because it's the only important thing in all of this. Our new action plan is not funded by European money, but from the budget of the city of Zagreb. And that's another big step, because before 2022 we didn't have any money that was that in the city of budget that was for integration. We didn't have any, so it's a big step forward. We hope to expand that money in the later years, but it's a good thing that we have started like this. With the coordination, but with the dialogue we have with the CSOs, they really gave us a lot of positive suggestions that we can implement, not just in this action plan, but more importantly in the city's offices for healthcare, for social care, and so on. So when we can, we implement every viable suggestion. I would say that in the last 2 years we have regular meetings of the coordination, but in these meetings they are open to anybody who wants to come. So it's not just the elected representatives for the coordination, and I think it's really important, because when we were making the draft for the new action plan, a lot of suggestions came from the people who are not in the coordination, but they were really interested in this topic, and they came and they gave us viable suggestions, especially around the employment section. Okay, I think I should shorten this a bit. So our dialogue and our cooperation with the CSOs is exponentially better than it was 2 years ago. I think I can speak also from the point of CSOs, because they tell us that it has never been better. They have never felt more comfortable in talking with the city of Zagreb, and that's a big thing. For the end, I would like to say that we are different organizations. There are different rules. Laws are the same, but we, from the standpoint of the city, look at some things differently than the CSO. But that's a good thing, because if we only see things from our perspective, you can go really far, and you cannot be better than you are. And I'm thankful for our CSOs that they're really open-minded, and they help us to make our job a lot better. And for the last sentence, I would like to say that we are always looking for projects like this, because we have a lot to learn about these topics. We are really young in this section, so experiences and good practices from other cities and organizations are really invaluable in this segment. So that would be all from me for today. I hope you understood me, and I am open to questions later.
Thank you, Judith. I would like to move now to Birgit from the city of Berlin. Maybe you can also elaborate and refer to the experience of Zagreb in comparison to the experience that Berlin has had and is having at the moment, also with the integration of practices and suggestions from civil society and the work you're doing with the arrival of refugees to the city. So please, Birgit.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for elaborating, Jurica, and also for the presentation. I'm giving you a small insight from Berlin. In Berlin, we have I think we can say that we have the general approach in the whole area of migration and especially integration, which we call participation. So we are trying to really change the paradigm and not talk about integration anymore. So at least that's our approach to the whole topic, but to talk about participation in the context of migration society, to frame it in a way that to overcome this concept of people who come new would only be the ones to have to adjust to the already existing society, but that they should be invited from the very first day to participate and to really also be able to cooperate with the authorities in the way, not with the authorities, but with the administration of Berlin in developing the measures and all the policies that are that we conceptualize and realize in Berlin. So this is the whole approach, and we actually try to see. So we have to say in Berlin we really have a very active civil society, and we have many self-organizations of people with migration history from different areas and different topics in different also, let's say, generations, also people who have newly arrived, for example, the people who arrived from Ukraine, third country members, but also Ukrainian citizens. They have organized very quickly and also have strong networks already, or are really keen on networking with the structures and civil society organizations we have here already. And so we are also always in the obligation to answer to this very strong civil society, which is also it meets to the approaches we have, and I think it's a good balance. Let's say it's like a dialogue, and we're trying to enforce this dialogue and try to really learn from each other. How can we really be able to work cooperatively and not implement measures like you also said, Jurica. I found it very, good to see that you said that many times the state puts measures or invents programs that don't meet the needs of the people to whom those programs would be benefiting. So that's what we try to do. And we also actually have a law in Berlin, which we renovated, or how do you say, novelated in the year 2021. And it's called the law or the Act for Participation. And it's about it has mainly three goals, and it's like a formalization of this approach we have. So the three goals of this law are that first we want to orient the whole public service towards what we call the migration society, so that they would also take into account in all the measures, laws, and programs that we have a very diverse and dynamic migration society. Then we also promote the employment of people with migration history. So it's also kind of an affirmative action law, which we try to get people into the public administration that would be like a mirror to the society and the diversity which is out there. And then the third goal of the law is to enforce the structures and further develop them, the structures of participation, so we can really promote this cooperative approach. And to give you some examples, what we actually do or did in this approach, we have a concept for the integration and participation of refugees in Berlin, and that is coordinated in our part of the administration, which is called, it's still called integration. Meanwhile, we are trying to change also this notion, but we are coordinating this this program, but it's actually on all the topics that would concern newly arrived people or refugees, and so we work together with all the different parts of the administration that are in charge of those topics. So let's say we try to coordinate what is the administration for work is doing, which programs do they have, and all that. And then we had a huge process where we try to enforce this cooperation with civil society. So we had the different areas put working groups with different civil society organizations, with refugees who could speak for themselves. And so we try to implement this kind of working together with civil society and with the so-called target group in this program. So the outcome is that it should be very near to the needs and to the wishes and of the people who come as refugees. And we also had this when the war against Ukraine broke out in February, that there were many migration organizations and initiatives who were directly at the front. So they were at the station welcoming the refugees, and they did all the work which the state wasn't able to do in the first moment, or the state was also present, but you could see that this agile, very sudden reaction would obviously come from the civil society. And so we tried to be in contact with them, and also we found some project money so that we could support those activities. And we really tried to set forms how we can work together. And we can see that in 2015, when there were also many refugees coming after the Syrian the war in Syria, that it's working better now. So we can see that it's also very good to create structures and communication canals, which also are carrying us not only in the very moment of action, but also throughout the years, and that we can develop certain ways of communication. Then there's one or two more examples I would like to give. We also have councils, which we call Council for Participation, and those councils are elected by migration organizations within the city, and all the migration organizations can can elect the people who go to this council. And it's also the basis of also the law or the act for participation. And we just did this election process, and we also tried to create a different paradigm a little bit, that we try to have on one side the representatives of different communities, but also of different topics. And then on the other side, frame it more like an expert advisory board. So to show that people in the city, they really have the knowledge and the expertise on certain topics. And we try to connect in this advisory boards those people who are elected from the civil society with members of the public administration on a very high level, but also on the working level, so that they both could be like couples or pairs that are working together on the different topics. So we just started this and gave it a new structure, and we're very excited about this new tool. We had the tool before, but now we are trying to we are starting in a new phases, and we are very happy and excited about it. So I think I can stop here, and I'm looking forward to some questions maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a short question, because you often find the case in which these kind of practices are put into place but are not that easy to institutionalize, and then when the city administration changes some of the work that gets done, then it very likely disappears. And the case of the city of Barcelona, there is a project in this, it's a partner in this project. It can be an example of this. Barcelona has been a city that has implemented many of the inputs of different civil society organizations, such as Open Arms, but also Mediterranean at the local level, but also internationally, transnationally at the European level. So could you say something about the ways in which these practices get institutionalized, and what are the challenges to make them integrated into the structures of the city administration, regardless of who is in power in the different period?
Sorry, it's complicated, the techniques. Yeah, we actually had this case right now because we had a change in the administration, or in the government of the city and the state of Berlin just some months ago. And it was a change because the election that took part 2 years ago was wrong. I don't know if you heard, but there were some problems, and so it had to be how do you say yeah, they had to make it new, and then no one expected that, but suddenly the Social Democratic Party made a new coalition with the Conservative Party, and then of course you could see in the program that this new government gave themselves, the whole word or the whole notion of participation was gone. So it was very obvious to see that, of course, new governments or different governments have their very special way of wanting to do those things. We actually were very, very lucky because the former administration or the former government, they really lay a very great emphasis on this participatory approach, and they had us. I think we wouldn't have been able to renew this law. It looks like this, and in the way we did that, but with this more left wing or more it was the Green Party, the Left Party, and the Social Democratic Party, and so we took the the advantage or the opportunity to really make the law in this way, like you say, it was very important for us to really put the structures into this law. So we put, for example, which I said, this advisory board. It is in the law. It is established there, and it cannot be changed like this. No? Of course, the parliament can decide that they want to change that. And so we also put this participatory approach into the law. And we said that measures and programs should always be cooperatively developed. Yeah, it's a little bit it's more on the field of integration and migration, but it's also actually the law goes for the whole society in all the areas of policies. It's not that everyone in the Berlin Senate knows that and the administration works like that, but at least we have it on paper, and we are trying to implement that, and we can always refer on this. Of course, the examples you gave from Barcelona, it's always a struggle, no? Every structure that is not actually in a law, or of course the law is also only paper, and there are many obstacles also that certain people put into your way. And we can also see that, for example, very easily, or you can see that easily in the whole area of personnel, restructuring the personnel of Berlin's administration, which should be more diverse. We have quotas and all that, but you can see that there are, of course, measures and structures that always are put into the way by people who are not convinced of those measures. But I think this active civil society, they are always on our feet, and they always point to the points where they have their claims and all that. And so I'm confident that this goes on like that in Berlin, but of course it's always also a struggle.
Thank you very much, Birgit. We are moving now to hear the testimonies and the experience of activists and civil society. So for that, we've invited Nikos, as I mentioned, and being the director at Inter Alia, you've for many years been working closely with the administration of different Greek cities, but not only, and you also have experience in integrating participatory methods from citizens into the local administration, based also on what the Birgit and Jurica have said. Could you tell us a bit more about your experience with Inter Alia into cooperating directly with cities, and how do you relate with some of the experience that they've shared?
Thank you, Marta. Good afternoon, everyone. It was kind of strange and frustrating to hear about the participatory and inclusive methods applied in Zagreb and the city of Berlin. And the reason is that the level of civil society, municipalities, cooperation exchange is to a very, very fertile state, very limited and very disrupted. To give you an example, I would say there is a union of municipalities in Greece, and this municipality works with working groups. The working group that is which has in its portfolio the migration, it's called Crisis Management and Migration. This indicates the approach that Greek municipalities overall have and take regarding the migration and refugee issue. It is primarily, first and foremost, a security-related issue, and is communicated as such. But before that, I would like to say a couple of words about Inter Alia's approach, because it's not fair to take credit as activists in the field of migration. There are organizations in the front line, organizations that risk their lives or their freedoms to be involved in sea rescue operations. some of them are here with us, and these are the ones that should be considered activists. What Inter Alia has been trying to do throughout the years, close to what Bridget was saying, but with an extra part regarding the active involvement of refugees themselves in creating policies and practices in the field. What we are working a lot on is the adaptation necessary by the local populations in Greece, the level of engagement that they need to have in order to have any kind of sustainable policies. Apparently, we are failing. We are into a new period, a very dark period of Greek politics after, as you've heard, there is a sweeping victory of the Conservative Party, which would lead eventually to monophony. However, the goal of Inter Alia has always been to bring forward intersectional approach and connect the struggles of the locals and the civil society with the struggles of migrants and refugees. This is what we've been doing, and this is what we're trying to put forward in our work with municipalities and cities throughout the years. A second part that leads to our preference or our strategy of working with municipalities and cities is our willingness and commitment to protecting and advocating for rights and freedoms through different advocacy actions. In fact, we are currently running an ECI, European Citizens Initiative, called related to dignified reception in Europe, that I'm actually sharing now on
You accidentally mute yourself, Nikos.
Okay, thank you. And the third aspect that Inter Alia is involved in the field of migrant and refugee reception and integration is related to the question of belonging, to how, under what conditions one is considered alien, one is considered a foreigner, one is considered to belong. So as you can see, the work that Inter Alia has been doing is in the middle between conceptual, intellectual work and work in the field. For this reason, I'm just trying to point out that the collaboration with the municipalities has been, for us, our access has been relatively easier in comparison to organizations working at the forefront, and in their case, the stakes are much higher. The conflicts with municipalities and cities are much stronger and much more intense. From our point of view, we have taken the strategic decision of collaborating with municipalities and cities because we believe that they are closer to the ground. They are better able to understand the needs and to work with civil society. They're in better position to listen, fulfill the needs of refugees. And of course, we are supporting collaboration, transnational collaboration, because in the case of Greece, there is a lot to be learned by the experiences of other countries where municipalities and cities have an actual role in decision making. Unfortunately, this is not the case in Greece for different reasons, which are both political and institutional. And this is related to the powerlessness of municipalities and municipal institutions. There is very little competence and discretion in creating policies and allocating resources. Currently, as one could look at the map with the municipalities and their political inclination, we can see that it is all with the same political party, which is the Conservative political party, which leaves very limited room to maneuver and work for changing this institutional balance of powerlessness. And the reason is that the municipal leaders and the mayors and staff more often than not see municipalities as a step to get to the central politics. Because of the powerlessness and the lack of resources that was mentioned earlier, political leaders of municipalities only can take this road to central politics. So what I mean to say that there is no competition put forward by municipalities. A line comes from a political party, and down to the mayors, and it is this that it's been applied. Unfortunately, there has been very little willingness of committing and contributing to a progressive policy as the one that our initiatives and the initiatives as from the city to the city that Inter alia is also included opts for and aspires to. A final point that I have raised before, and I would like to repeat now, is related to the relationship between the civil society and the municipal institutions. Going into the case of Athens, of the Greek capital, we can see that there is hostility between the municipal leadership and the actors on the ground. And when I'm talking about actors on the ground, I'm not talking about organized civil society, because in the crisis that Greece went through in 2015 and later on, it was not the civil society organizations, the structures that played only the civil society, that the organized civil society that played the role, but a very important part of the work was done by unofficial networks, by grassroots organizations that were mobilized, and they did all the difference. And the reason that the municipal authorities cannot be connected with those is that there is a different perception of the role that one goes into these affairs. One is related to public image and political survival. The other is solidarity and humanism. To give you a final example, when from the City to the City conference took place in Palermo for a Welcoming Europe, actually in June 2020, indeed, after Inter alia's involvement and some emails back and forth, the municipality of Athens actually participated. It came and they signed the document. We were quite satisfied because this seemed to be to give a light of hope that there is a prospect of collaboration and so on. What was indicative, however, and bitterly expected, was that when the biannual report of activities that the municipality of Athens have carried out in the field of migration and refugees, which was an 80-page document, had no single word of reference to the participation of the mayor of Athens in the Palermo conference. This highlights the fact that it is quite easy to be very progressive and forward-looking in a safe environment, and a very different thing when you need to prove it in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikos. May I ask you, in reference also to the project and also with this experience that you've shared, what kind of spaces and structure does these kind of hybrid projects provide for pushing forwards our objectives and strategies? Like, you also have experience within this kind of EU-funded projects, and it provides also opportunities such as this panel and event that we're having now.
Definitely. So this is
relate to this, to opportunities.
For the case, and this is why Inter alia is involved and strongly committed to finding European solutions, transnational solutions. First, because we don't believe in solutions coming from the nation state, but also conceptually, but also because we see that there is no commitment and no political will on behalf of state institutions. So this means that the EU funding, which in certain occasions is well-directed and in some fewer cases generous, can make a lot of difference in the advocacy work that we mean to do, in giving us the time and space to communicate, maybe not in the case of Greece, but in many other cases, and build a common strategy. You can see that in the case of Berlin, as our colleague and panelist spoke about, or Jurica from the city of Zagreb, this seems to work, but political commitment needs to be there. However, without the resources by the European institutions, we cannot push effectively for this political commitment. So it is crucial, and in the case of Greece and Athens, I'm afraid that this is the only way to go.
Thank you, Nikos. And since you reference also to the transnational aspect, I'm giving now the word to Christian, whose experience is a bit different, because with Europe Must Act and also from the city to the city that Nikos just talked about, the structure and the way of working with the administration, it doesn't start from the local level, because the organizations are working transnationally. It's an alliance of different groups based in different cities. So this comes with another layer of coordination and of implementation and of suggestion that needs to connect this local level that these different groups that Europe Must Act and from the city to the city are putting together. So maybe you can explain a bit what Europe Must Act and from the city to the city does, and how this also connects to the inputs that activists and civil society are giving directly to city administrations.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. Thanks for having me in this discussion or this panel presentation today. Yeah, just to make it clear, because you already said there are two names out there, Europe Must Act and From Sea to City. Europe Must Act is the organization I'm working for as a network coordinator. And From the Sea to the City is an alliance of civil society organizations across Europe. And you already mentioned with Europe Must Act, we have a structure which is contains of city chapters, so groups in several countries across Europe who try to raise awareness for the situation of people on the move, and this is very important for this panel here today, try to put pressure. I think Birgit already mentioned it. Try to put pressure on city governments, on mayors, and in general the authorities in their cities. And From the Sea to the City is and was a main actor in the establishment of the International Alliance of Safe Harbors, a city network, which I think will be addressed later in this workshop today. And this is an alliance of groups that came together to push this municipal approach, to push this idea of getting cities more active in the whole field, and especially the political advocacy work in the field of migration. Today, and especially in these days and weeks, I hope it's okay to take a few seconds to say why we are actually doing this and why we actually think that this is needed. I mean, this is something which civil society organizations are working on for years now, and we see a situation across Europe with appalling situations in the border regions. Nikos already mentioned the situation in the search and rescue, the sea missions. And we see a massive violation of human rights in borders and also in countries across Europe. And we think that we need welcoming cities across Europe to set a counter or an alternative to this, to camps in border regions and to pushbacks. We think that a strong civil society and strong welcoming cities across Europe ensure that we can create a working and functioning asylum and migration system in Europe, which welcomes people in cities and not in closed camps in Greece or in other countries across Europe. So this is really, really important to keep in mind. We are not doing this because we just want to improve the situation in our cities. It's because we need a concept that is working, a concept for migration and asylum in Europe. Why are we actually focusing on cities and working and cooperating with cities? Maybe as a little side note, we as civil society organizations and activists also receive criticism because a lot of groups want to raise awareness for the situation, but not so much work with politicians. Why do we actually think that this is important? And for us, it's important because we see that progressive migration policies are very, very much and very often blocked on national level across Europe. And with cities, we see that we can create partnerships or already have partnerships that are much more concrete, especially due to the fact that Nikos already mentioned that cities, not only the mayors and the city council and the civil servants, but also the civil society in cities knows what's going on in their cities. They know about the capacities, they also know about the problems. So they work very, very concretely on the topic, and they have a very, very strong argument if they do political advocacy work. And especially when it comes to mayors or elected council members, for example, from cities, we see that their voice is much stronger than the voice of activists. So we think if we work in a close cooperation with cities, that we can be much stronger and promote this this alternative that I was talking about, the municipal approach. To give a few concrete examples, I don't want to go into the details too much, but just to name some cities that we, especially as from Seed2City, were closely working together with, were the cities of Palermo and Potsdam, who were also involved in the initiation of the International Alliance of Safe Harbors back in 2021. These days it's Jurica, you are here, and Birgit is the cities of Munich, the cities of Zagreb and Berlin, but I think also the city of Munich should be mentioned here, and many other cities as well. From the experience from Europe Must Act, I want to add that it's not only the big cities that are interesting in this field, it's also the smaller municipalities who very often are extremely interested in progressive approaches, because they are much more flexible. They are even closer to the situation, and they have a very good overview of what is happening and what is needed. So this is one thing. The other thing is that we see a dynamics where smaller municipalities who are located around bigger cities can kind of create pressure on bigger cities. So this is also another approach where we think it's good to not only have the big names on the list or on the table, but also look at whatever size a municipality actually has. And then Birgit, you already mentioned it. What is really, really important is to put pressure on cities. But for us, it's not the pressure that most of us probably know in form of protest. It's, of course, it's part of our work, of course, but it's a pressure that is much more based on cooperation, not in a way that we just want to say yes to everything. It's a very respectful work that we do together, but whenever we see that there is pressure needed, we of course apply this pressure. With the cities that I mentioned, we see that this cooperation is working quite smoothly. And working well, but of course we always have to think about the fact that there is this different cultures. I think it was Jurica, you already mentioned it. There's a complete different way of working and thinking in cities than in civil society organizations, of course. But we see that over time, when we talk to each other, when we meet each other, when we have these events, and sometimes also have a drink together after an event to get to understand how are these people working, vice versa. That really helps, and it needs time. This is really a crucial learning. And speaking of time, what we see is the weak points or the risks that we see, or things that are important, is capacities. This is the biggest problem that we see in cities, or one of the biggest problems, that there needs to be someone in charge who decides to create capacities and resources to actually work in these corporations with civil society. And this is actually a part where we try to discuss and put pressure on cities, and also the work structure, because there was a big learning for us as well, that there is a difference in political decision making and operative decision making. So to decide to have a meeting or something, that's not a problem for someone who works in a city administration, but to take political decisions, that needs the involvement of a mayor, of the city council. And this was a big learning for us, to create a work structure where we have the chance to work efficiently on the operative tasks, and then distinguish what is a political decision, because these always need more time. To also talk a little bit about the benefits and limits. What we see, of course, and what is a criticism within the civil society and NGO world, is that there's the risk of whitewashing. We see that there are alliances where cities sign up. I think, Nikos, you kind of mentioned the city of Athens, where we receive the criticism, okay, they just give their name, they're on the list, and it seems like they are very progressive, but in the end, they're actually doing nothing. And we had this, regularly have this discussion within our groups, but we think that it's worse to take this risk to create new ideas, to create new cooperations. And we think that giving a signature is also taking a stand. So it does not mean that this frees a city who signs a statement from everything and that they are just looking well and fine. We of course can criticize them and make them work in the direction we want them to work. Yeah, maybe as a last 1 or 2 statements, what we think is also very important is that municipalities can reach a much broader or diverse group of people in their cities, because of course we as activists are more looking into a leftish bubble in cities and are more connected to a leftish bubble most of the times, not all of the times. But municipalities, of course, they have a much broader reach, or can actually reach out to all their citizens in their cities, and also explain to them why things are needed, why things are problematic. And we think that's very important. Yeah, I think long term, that's maybe one last thing that I could add here. We already heard about changes in cities, and this is a very crucial thing for us, that we try to, as a civil society, try to be the stable factor in this. Even if the government of a city changes, we are still there, and we are pushing our demands and our ideas, and try to, yeah, in the lower level, in the administrative level, get these close cooperations, because of course they very often don't change when the government in a city changes. And yeah, we've seen this, for example, in the city of Palermo. They were a very, very strong actor, and due to a new elected city government and mayor, this cooperation ended. So this is really a very crucial thing for the long-term cooperation. And what we also think is our responsibility as civil societies to explain to cities or municipalities what the advantages actually are of joining a network, because very often middle-sized municipalities who are maybe not so involved in migration, they said, why do we actually have to get involved? And this is also a big task for us to explain this to cities in meetings, why this is actually needed, or why they need to be more active in this field, and what their advantages are. Yeah, I think that's a rough overview. I could of course talk for 2 more hours after a lot of years of experience. But yeah, thanks a lot for joining today.
It was really, really helpful to hear about your experience, and I'm sure the audience have many questions about what all of you have said. But I would like to remind you that the questions are going to be discussed during the breakout room sessions. So now we're going to take a 15 minutes break. It's 3 and 2. We will reconnect at 3 and 15 for the second panel. What does cooperation between European city networks and civil society in the field of migration look like? Moderated by Lisa Lober in the city of Berlin. And we will reconnect, 3:15 for another hour of the second panel, and then we will move into the breakout rooms for questions and discussions with the panelists and the audience. So thank you very much again, Christian, Virgil, Nikos, and Jurica. It was really, really helpful and interesting, this first introduction panel, and see you all in less than 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the meeting is being recorded, so we're ready to start. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lorbe. I'm working for the city of Berlin. As Marta already mentioned, Berlin is one of the partners in the project Cities4Refugees. But fortunately, today I'm not here as representing Berlin. I'm here as the moderator. And I'm really happy to moderate the second panel. Thank you for all the participation of the very interesting input of the first panel. We had the possibility to look into more local cooperation between civil society actors and city administrations, especially in the field of forced migration, asylum, displacement, and participation.
And now we're stepping up in a more national and even international level. And the question that I would like to ask today in the second panel is, how does cooperation work between national city networks and civil society and international or European city networks and civil societies in the field of forced migration? And I'm really happy that we have 4 wonderful guests here today, representing national city networks and international city networks, and as well representing civil society organizations that work closely with those city networks. And I would like to start with my first guest. I would like to introduce to you Rudi Osman. Rudi, welcome. Happy to have you here. You have been a political activist for many years. You are a human rights activist, and you were a human rights activist in Syria. So when you had a very active role in the revolution there. And after you've been forced to leave your country, you continued your activism in France, actually. And I heard that you actually encountered some difficulties when you were trying to resume your law studies in France. And so it wasn't that easy for you to continue your education there. So given your own experience, you decided to take matters in your own hands, and you funded the Union of Exiled Students in 2018. It's a non-profit organization that supports the access of exiled people to higher education in France. So I was wondering, I mean, I can imagine, especially in the beginning, or maybe even now, the Union of Exiled Students with a very clear purpose kind of is forced to cooperate with administrative institutions, for example, universities, but I'm sure also other entities. So I was wondering, were there kind of obstacles that you encountered when you first started? What were these obstacles, and how did it develop over the time?
Hello, Lisa, and hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for having me today and to give me this opportunity to talk about our obstacles as an organization created by and for exiled people. So actually, the question is so large, and there is a lot of things that I can talk about it. In the beginning, actually, we as an organization created by exiled people and refugees, we try to make our statute to get only access to our board for exiled students who get access to the university. And I remember that the prefecture, the first thing they told us that, you don't have right actually to make an organization created only by refugees and accept only refugees. And we spent a lot of time to explain them that it's not a discrimination, but it's our object that we as refugees students could take the decision in our association, because this association will represent us. So we spend a lot of time to explain them, and finally that we told them that it's kind of discrimination against us, and they accepted that after a lot of going and coming back with us and with the prefecture. The second problem was actually to have a bank account, because we were all in the board asylum seekers, refugees, undocumented people. And they said, oh, from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Somalia, from Africa. No, actually, it's not easy to give you a bank account, because you as a Syrian, and at that time I was the president, they told me that you are Syrian, so there is like it could be like you will do like terrorist activity with this money that you will get, and we will not accept it actually. And the problem was that no bank give us any justification that they are refused to open our bank account, and we still like for 1 year trying to have this. We get the bank account, and we try like working together to doing a lot of things with the institutions. Like for the universities, one of problems was we have already syndicat and the student unions working, and the French student unions. Why we needed to open or to have a new one? and especially for refugees and exiled students. And they don't accept to deal with us normally because they don't consider us as elected students, and we are not legitimate to represent exiled students. And how we have this courage to make this discrimination between exiled refugee students and national students. So it was hard, and one of the problems till today that universities don't accept actually to give us the possibility to open a youth association for student refugees or exiles at the same university. They said, no, it's hard for us because you will just only for refugee students, and we don't want to. It's the same mentality actually, that they don't accept it easily. So how it's changed by that time, actually today we become one of the major actors who are working to help universities to help them actually, and they understand it, because our work today is not only to work with exiled students and refugee students to have access to the university, but we are working to help universities to understand the specialty of exiled students, their needs, how they can do to help them to be successful in their academic path. And universities today understand it very well, and they know that we are in them side, not only just to do this activism side only, but we just like working in the sensibilization. We are working to give them all resource, how they can understand, how they can do this academic path for unexiled students and successful pathway, especially because there is special needs and there is a special procedure actually to do it in that place. And now today, a lot of universities are still contacting us. With the cities like Mairie de Paris, so it was in the beginning hard to get that contact, because we were like sample refugees who arrived in France, who want to do things, to have a place actually to receive students. It was like every day we are in a new cafe, just bringing exiled students to there, and to have a place to do our work. It was hard, and we just get it in 2019 actually, and it's changed a lot, because every day we, like the first time we start our work, we're receiving every day 2-3 person. And suddenly the last time we were like receiving people, we arrived to 100% only Saturday, because there's a lot of people coming and want to presume them studying in higher education. And this is why actually we tried a lot, and we were so tired to try with the Mairie de Paris to have contact and to asking them, just give us a small place and we will really do amazing work. Just give us. The problem was for us to have a person, the right person to contact, because they asking us to go on the website and find that contact. It was like no one can find it actually. Even French people cannot do it. And we asked a lot of French people, French people to help us. It was for them the first time they visiting a website of Mairie de Paris, and there were really a lot of problems. So now today we collaborate a lot with the Mairie de Paris. We get from them since 2 years as subvention, so they support us financially to help us, and they give us for free now a place where we working, and we receiving every month 200 exiled people who want to presuming them higher education here in France, especially in Paris. And now in September there is 2 universities will give us a place, because we will help them to deal with administrative problems for exiled students who are already at them universities. So it's changed. It takes a lot of time. It's not easy, but we're trying to change it, and it's really hard. But today we we did it actually. So and it's not easy because to be treated as a refugee who only here in France to what they think actually the institution and the French people, they just thought that refugees here just to do works that French people don't want, and they don't need to go to the university actually because they don't need it. They don't know to read or they have these competence and qualifications. And for the institution to do this advocacy to convince them that we as refugees, we have the qualifications. We already studied universities at our original country, and we are here to be an actor who can contribute in the social life, in the economic life. Why not in the political life? Because we are the future citizen in France or in Europe or any country. So this is how we work, and this is how we try to do. And we know that this change takes time, but we are here and we can do it.
Rudi, thank you so much for your inspiring words. And thank you for taking us through this journey, because I think a lot of our audience can relate, especially from the civil society side, that it takes time to and like courage and endurance to not let go and to really find those allies in the administration and to also shape the discourse. I still have a question for you. You described the benefits of like financial support, having someone to talk to strategically also think of how to get the work done. Do you also see limitations in this cooperation? We heard in the first panel that Nikos and Christian were really focusing on like, yes, there are different roles. There's the role of the civil society organization and there's the role of the administration, and they're really pointing out that this is an issue. So also, do you see a limit in this cooperation, even though it gets better and better, but is there a point where you say, okay, but then that's that, we can't go further?
Actually, there is a limitation, and there is a lot of limits. Why? Because working with the city administration, especially elected people, it means that they are looking for people who will vote for them. And if we are talking about France, it's a special things what's happening in France too. So now to support a refugee organization, it's become like something not well done, because the climate here in France politically, it's become like not open to receive a lot of refugees, and it's the work of media and the extreme right wings. All this have effects on the cities and mayors to accept dealing with us openly. Actually, things changed with Anvita, who Leah, she's here, and hi Leah. So what's changed with them actually? We find for the first time alliance from cities, from mayors, that we know that they are supporting already refugees and they are open to receive refugees, and they take this risk actually, like politically and electorally, risk to support us and to support and say that we are ready to receive refugees, and we will do this solidarity with them because we know that they will be future citizens in our city. And others limit, it's the bureaucracy in France. Actually, it's take a lot of time, and this consideration that we, like, they don't consider us that's our alliance all the time, because as it's related to the political decision. So this summer we could be an alliance, and next year actually they don't know us, because they know that there is elections and they should to talk to try to show that. And the other problem that's the limitation related to the urgent things, what's happened, that's waves of refugees. Like today, we know that if we are working with only Ukrainian people, that means everything is for us. And if we say that, yeah, guys, but don't forget that there is Afghans, there is Syrians, there is others people. No, the wave today is for Ukrainian. So any project is created to help Ukrainians only, it's open for us. We will have others. Okay, it's not a problem for us. They can deal with it. So it's related to these waves of refugees and how much they can show by doing this solidarity. So even for the institutions and for cities too. So for universities, it's the same things too. So this kind of limitation could happen. One of the third one, I said that's one of the limitation is our specialty as we are working only on domain related to the access to the higher education, and we are experts, but we don't work in others domain or kind of support. And this is one of the problems actually. They said, okay, but we support, but not a lot. So we can just get a place, but to do our activities, but they are not open to help us to develop our activities, to go on and because we are we are working on only one domain that's related to the access to the higher education. And because there is this competitions happening between all civil society actors related to our work, they are working in the access of exiled people to their rights. So they are working too in this access to the higher education. So it's make kind of competition between us. So the institution will choose this one that's organization that's they already deal with it, or they know it, or they heard about it. And this kind of limitation of relation, it's happened a lot, and it's created even for us as civil society actors and association, this kind of competition all the time to show to the institution and to the cities that hey, we are the best. And yeah, it's related also. This is what Anvita actually give us. So give us as direct access to these actors to decide and to receive us, to have these direct connections too with the administration.
Wow, Rudi, thank you so much. Interesting thoughts, definitely. Thank you for sharing. And keep up the great work. Rudi, you have already mentioned Anvita, because it's one of your partners from the administrative side that you work with. Anvita actually stands for National Association of Welcoming Cities and Territories in English. And it's a French network that brings together local and regional governments and elected officials who work for unconditional reception policies, including exiled population and for hospitality in their territories. And I'm very happy that we have Lea here today, the national coordinator of Anvita. Lea, thank you so much for joining. I know you are in a different conference and you're like taking time for this one, so I'm very impressed. Lea, you have been working for Anvita since its creation, since 2018, I believe, and you witnessed the development from the founding cities that were actually only 9 to now 80 local authorities and around 50 individual members that include elected officials, parliamentarians, etc., etc. And I would love for you to take the floor and explain a bit more what Anvita is, what its mission is, and also focusing on the topic of this panel, what role did civil society have or has when it was developed, or also right now where you're still active and working on. Lea, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. So yeah, I'm Enon Baron from Anvita, and when we prepared this meeting, we thought it was interesting to just explain a bit what is Anvita structure, because when we start talking with other countries, we noticed that we had a structure a bit different that we can find in other countries. So we hope it can can be like a key to understand the role that we can play in France. So yeah, we were created in 2018 by 9-member cities. It was really a political will to create Andita at the beginning, and because it was after the Syrian crisis, and a lot of local authorities say that they don't have any correct answer to welcome with dignity migrants in their own territory. There were cities that at the the border city that say we cannot recognize like the right to stay a few days, a few weeks, a few months in the city in France because people don't have access to their rights. So we start talking about unconditional reception, starting from that point of view that wherever you are, you need to have access to your own right, even if you're not about to stay in France or just pass 2 weeks, but you need to have your rights. And finally, other cities decided to create Anvita depending on border cities, but also like a main city like Paris, to find, the idea of Anvita was to find a proper room for exchange inspiring practices, to have the common, assessment that we are not in charge of migration in this country, but we are at the front line and we have powers to facilitate or to help integrating, and we need to have a space to exchange practices, to understand how other cities are doing that. So yeah, it was a first idea of Anvita to create this space of exchange, but also to have a room for advocacy, to encourage welcoming and better participation of local and regional governments in the national process, to like really say that to welcome with dignity, we need to work together, the state, the central state in France, the local authorities, but also the civil society actors, like the three needs to work together to answer, to address the welcoming crisis that we were living in France, but that in other countries as well. So yeah, Anvita now gather almost 80 local and regional government all across France, and we are really proud that there is small towns from 14 inhabitants to Paris, which is the largest city in France. So we have a lot of diversity in the member of Anvita. And just to explain quickly, we are an association, like Anvita is an association, but the member of the association, to be part of the association and to join the association, you need to be elected. And you need to represent or a local authority or yourself as a representative elected, like in common election, like it can be local election, but also parliamentary election. So we are a team of 5 employees. We are 2 co-directors. There is 3 program officers in 2 cities in France, in Nantes and Cré. Normally, Solène is with me today and going to be a bit longer with you today. And so the team is how do you say, we are our boss are the cities, you know, like we are 2 co-presidents, Damien Carême, which is at the creation of Anvita and now is MEP, but also Jeanne Darséguian, the mayor of Strasbourg, like really our direct political orientation of the association. And then there are 10 vice presidents that represent a lot of cities like Lyon, Bordeaux, Grenoble, Mel, which is a rural city, etc., etc. So yeah, just for you to, it was not that easy at the beginning to this structure that the city felt the space to own this space. We were like really animating as a team, but I think like one of the recommendations I can share is that we succeeded to create a relation of trust. For example, we work a lot of expressing ourselves like the more clearly to that they understand the the benefits they will have to work with us. We gain in reactivity, and we address the need directly. So this is the point of the mission of Anvita. I don't know if you want me to keep up with the cooperation with civil society.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Rudi was mentioning it a bit, that one of this this competition aspect among civil society actors, and how to cooperate with the administration structure. And so I was wondering also, when you choose your civil society partners, how do you choose them? How does this cooperation starts, or how in general play civil society organizations a role when it comes to Anvita?
Well, but I think the cooperation with the Union des étudiants exilés is a good example of it's, you know, it was like how do you say, like it was an opportunity, and for example, we didn't, you know, choose someone. It was like just an easy way to work together because we were part of the same program, so we know each other, and we knew that we have the need from local authority to work on this field. It was the participation of exiled people to local policies, and we knew that UEE had the expertise, and well, we started the conversation like that, like, you have the expertise, do you want to work with that? And at that moment, I think UEE has an interest also to work closer with local authorities. So I think it represents mainly a lot of how we create cooperation. It's more like, for example, we have a lot of working group, and we love to work technically with other civil society association, and the way to orientate it, because all our team say like, oh, this association is like really an expert on this field, and we want expertise, etc. Or on the other way, we start the thematic, and some association approached us like, oh, we are experts in this field, can we work together, etc. So we don't feel like we need to choose people who work with. We really want to, we notice this kind of competition they can have between civil society actors. Hopefully, I think the fact that we are an association with an association, a local authority, we are not part of the competition. So we feel like just a partner with many associations in France. So we are pleased to have this kind of position. And so I think there is space for everyone, and more we are working like with inter-organization coalition with a lot of associations working in the same, well, this way is more about the advocacy level. So at the technical level, we feel that there's room for everyone, and in advocacy level, we like work as a coalition. So it's really easy going to work with many actors in France.
Amazing. Leah, thank you so much for your input. Also great to have this kind of network perspective. And I know, like, again, I can only encourage to keep up the good work. It's great to hear that yeah, our neighboring countries have such a great and active network. And we've been looking now on the national level with Rudi and Leah, and from a French perspective in that case. And I would like to jump now to a transnational, or let's say international, or in our case, European level. So focusing on a cooperation between an international city network and a civil society organization. And therefore, I would like to welcome Tiago da Cruz. Welcome, happy to have you. Tiago, you are a political scientist, actually focusing on denationalization processes through policy making in general and migration policies specifically. Sounds very interesting. But today I would like to pick your brains more from your activist side, because you've been an activist for many years and in different organizations. But today you are representing a consortium of civil societies named From the Sea to the City. And first of all, I would like to ask you, what does this consortium entail? Who are members of the consortium? And also, under which circumstances was this consortium created or came to life? that would be great if you could share a few thoughts on that. Thank you, Tiago.
Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. Hello, Jane, Rudy, and Leah. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so From the City to the City is a consortium of civil society organizations. So consortium meaning an association of organizations. In this, a consortium is actually an association of individuals, organizations, or governments. Could be also of companies. So in our case, it's a civil society organization network, to put it another way. And of civil society organizations working in different in the migration domain, but at different stages of the migration process. So that means that in the consortium we have sea rescue organizations, other organizations carrying out important work on the ground in cities and towns across Europe. Research organizations and think tank. So it is a mix of organizations that are complementary in a way. So in that sense, the consortium counts on a lot of expertise from different parts of the migration process. So From the City to the City came to be, it was a long process, a long 8 years, and 4 milestones, I would say. So there was the Charter of Palermo, first of all, in 2015, which was basically a declaration by the mayor of Palermo at that time, Leo Luca Orlando, who is a firm believer of universal right to mobility. So in this declaration, he was explaining what the universal right to mobility would be, but basically it's what gave then birth to the process that was an incipient in the Palermo Charter process. So in 2018, there were 40 participants in Palermo again. So building upon this charter and these principles, the Palermo Charter process initiated what would then become From the City to the City. And that was initiated, as I said, by one mayor, Leo Luca Orlando. There were other representatives, for example, commissioner from the City Council of Barcelona, and an organization, mostly one organization that was Alarm Phone, but in this Palermo Charter process, there were already most of the organizations that are part of From the City to the City nowadays. Yeah, so it was quite a remarkable situation, because there we had we had gathered the organizations working in different aspects of migration, and this expertise was the fuel, let's say, of this consortium that right now is it was founded in 2020, sorry, more or less informally through a series of webinars that were articulating the principles and goals, which were mainly 5 during the pandemic, since we were not able to meet in person during that year. There was this idea to make a series of panels online, and through that series, From the City to the City was basically created, and then culminated in the 2021 From the City to the City conference, a conference for a welcoming Europe, it was called, in Palermo again. So Palermo, as you see, was really the base and the light of hope to a lot of organizations across Europe and probably beyond. And at this conference in Palermo, there was the foundation then of IAS, which is the International Alliance of Safe Harbors. So in that sense, there was a strong bet to work with municipal government, obviously sparked by this declaration of one specific mayor, but that was at that time really resonating throughout Europe. So there was a lot of support. I know we are talking about 2015, from 2015 to 2021, and times have changed a lot in this sense, but there was this momentum and the active participation of many local governments, which, as many of the colleagues, the other panelists have said before, is subject to political shifts. So we, as a civil society organization consortium, part of our work is really detecting these political moments and trying to work around the political shifts or with them in some cases, if it's possible. And also here I would like to mention as one of the things we see as our task is this complexity of networks, right? So there are so many networks, national, international, and that cities are involved in, that we try to optimize, and instead of having overlaps with other networks, what we try to do, and we are trying to do now, is to have them join this special or consortium, which is actually working close together with an International Alliance of Safe Harbors. So you have here a consortium of civil society organizations in collaboration directly with city councils in their own network. So this is a special aspect. Yeah, I think I answered.
Yes, thank you so much. No, really interesting. I mean, it is complex. I think all of us know that there are so many different players and circumstances to consider. And as you say, political shifts have a major impact. So thank you for showing this complexity, but at the same time, also pointing out the role of from the sea to the city. Tiago, on a more like let's say personal experience from your side, as far as I know, you have been an activist in as well local cooperation with as a civil society organization with cities, and now you also mentioned this international or transnational cooperation formats. So since we were focusing in the first panel really on the city local cooperation between civil society organizations and city administration, I was wondering if you could share your experience, if you see the difference between those two cooperation formats, so the local one and the international one. Is there something, a different approach or different facts that you have to factor in when you start these cooperation? Could you share a bit of your experience in that regard?
Sure. Well, in Barcelona, I have been active in different organizations. One of them was, for example, a hostel that was a reception center, basically for young male migrants that were basically, after they turned 18, they are thrown in the streets by the state. So they become homeless all of a sudden. And this hostel specifically, but other projects, this was also a foundation or an association behind it. This was co-financed by the City Council of Barcelona. They did implement many things, and they were collaborating and are collaborating a lot with the civil society organizations in the migration domain. In this sense, like, it's the venue where we do our activism depends a lot on the goal, right? So when talking about the activism in Barcelona, of course, there is this type of activism that is very direct and concrete, such as working in a hostel with young migrants. And then we have other stuff that can become more political. And this is something that is tricky anyway. So, for example, Barcelona, at the time from the sea to the city was founded and the Palermo charter process was happening. There was this commissioner for the refuge city, which was a label that Barcelona took it upon itself as a city council. So there was this commissioner responsible for carrying out all these activities connected with other transnational actors. And in the last mandate, this commissioner was not there anymore. So it was a political decision that moved Barcelona a little bit more away from these more transnational objectives. Which is something that from my activism I was trying to recover. But of course, this entails institutional design, how they have organized their mandate, and it's not an easy task, right? So, yeah, locally, I guess there are very concrete things that can be achieved. The city council counts on some budget and can allocate these budgets accordingly. And transnationally, I guess this becomes a lot more political. And this is also the challenge, but also the most interesting thing for me about From This to the City, that the venue, our venue now is actually the European Union, working with city councils from all over Europe. So for me as a politologist, this is has a special added value, because it's a very interesting point of overcoming the national state in a way, without really overcoming it, because city councils are state actors. So we are basically working with state actors that do not necessarily agree with what the states are doing. This has a high value politically, theoretically, but also in practice, maybe symbolically. But yeah, I think this is like the venue and the goals, they change from the local perspective in this sense that it can become very theoretical or very concrete, depending on what exactly you're doing. I do want to mention also that I'm an activist for Alarm Phone. So I take phone calls from boats in distress. This is also a transnational organization, so it's not so much related to your question on my local activism, but we do have a local group in Catalonia that we just formed this group for Alarm Phone there, and have been collaborating with it for 3 years now.
All right, Tiago, thank you so much. Really interesting, different perspective, like from both sides, how suddenly Brussels becomes more important, and how the difference between working on the field, on the ground, and working in more advocacy on a more European level. So thank you, Tiago, for your input. And we have heard now always, like I think even in panel 1 it was mentioned, the International Alliance of Safe Harbors. And I'm not sure if everyone really knows what is behind the International Alliance of Safe Harbors. So therefore, I'm really happy to welcome now Janne Grote, who can shed a bit more light on this alliance. However, Janne, you are actually a colleague of mine. You work for the city of Berlin at the Senate Department for Labor, Social Services, Gender Equality, Integration, Diversity, and Anti-Discrimination. This is a very big and interesting department. And you are a policy officer for asylum and migration policy. And you're actually focusing on national and international city networks in the field of asylum and migration. And so how come that you're representing here not Berlin, but the International Alliance of Safe Harbors?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Lisa, and thank you for having me. With regard to your question, I think I have to divide it into three parts. First of all, and with regard to the overall topic of our conference here today, the work of several civil society organizations, and Thiago has just raised the history of the alliance, has an important share in why I'm here today. And the participation of several cities such as Palermo, Potsdam, Munich, Athens, and others with civil society organizations in the past made the International Alliance of Safe Harbors possible. So that's the first aspect why I'm here today. Secondly, I personally am a policy officer, yes, in the Berlin Senate Department, but my position is I'm particularly responsible for Berlin's participation in several national and international city networks in the context of forced migration, migration, and participation, such as the International Alliance of Safe Harbors. So I was given real-time shares to do this work. And it's important to say that because it was mentioned before in several presentations that time and resources is relevant. Either you have, like Anvita, you are particularly employed within the network. We don't do that yet, or you get timeshares within your work in the administration to do such work. And I'm lucky enough and privileged to have such timeshares for this work. So this position was newly created 2 years ago as the Senate decided that they wanted to strengthen this task of city networking in this context. And this again was in the momentum and context of becoming a member of the National Alliance of Safe Harbors and Solidarity Cities in the aftermath, which again was pushed by civil society organizations in Berlin particularly. So it is again this intermatch. So that's also why I'm here. And last but not least, I'm here today representing the EASH cities because we did set up a coordination group of cities in the International Alliance in close cooperation with from the sea to the city, so the civil society part, in order to drive the process forward more independently also as cities and not to leave it to the work only to the civil society partners. So I'm privileged to come here as a member of this coordination group.
Thank you, Janne. It gives a great picture of all the forces that have to work together to actually have, as you said, the time and resources to push things forward. But I would also like you to show a bit more, or talk about the activities and the purpose of the International Alliance of Safe Harbors. There were different momentums already mentioned by Thiago and Palermo of from the sea to the city, bringing basically cities together to stand up for certain objectives. If you would be so kind to elaborate a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So EASH or I would concentrate on the part where Thiago left us. I would say the Palermo Declaration and or the meeting in 2021. So IERJ is a European network of now 34 member cities from 7 different EU countries in very close cooperation with the From the Sea to the City consortium of civil society organizations, plus a few affiliated cities, I would say, who are interested in our work and cooperating in different tasks we do, but not being members yet. So in autumn last year, we had an IERJ meeting, which was initiated against by our by From the Sea to the City, the civil society part. That was the initiating moment, I would call it, when several cities so city representatives voiced their will to give IERJ a structure which allows for more independent action and so on. So we came up with this coordination group mainly by cities in cooperation. So in the follow-up process, this coordination group decided which tasks to take, and we came up with several working groups we wanted to raise, and then we thought of which resources we have and all these different actors to set up the activities and what makes sense with these resources to actually tackle. And then we thought of well, what is the basis of our work and what are the goals of the IERJ? And the goals are set in the so-called Palermo Declaration, which was written down at the conference 2021. Civil society actors and cities. It was the founding moment of the IERJ, and those the Palermo Declaration consists of mainly 5 requests and statements. And the first one is a right to asylum and no transit zones at the external borders of the EU. So to prevent camp situations like Moria. Secondly, facilitating direct municipal admission of refugees from the European borders and camps to such cities willing to offer additional admission capacities. Thirdly, advocate for direct EU funding for host municipalities, which means European institutions should provide direct financial support to those municipalities willing to offer additional support. Then strengthening solidarity and promoting for a fair burden sharing at the EU level. And lastly, we promote for more legal migration paths for pragmatic immigration policy. So on this basis, the coordination group then came up, okay, what can we do with our resources? And so we set up 2 working groups. And the first one is to draft a joint statement with main principles and requests, and I will get back there in a second. And the second was a more practical approach to make knowledge exchange, best practice exchange, exchange of questions and answers possible on a more practical level between cities. So that is something I would exclude now, but we are working on that too. So with regard to the joint statement, we are drafting at the moment within a working group such a statement, and it will closely be linked to the Palermo Declaration, and that's why I mentioned those goals again, because you probably know the common European asylum system negotiations at the moment. So many of those goals we set, or statements and principles we set in that declaration, are still very valid at the moment. So we will closely be linked to the Palermo Declaration. We will renew it, and we want to tackle the EU institutions and the EU parliamentary elections coming up in 2021 by this new joint statement. And we will try to promote the statement to the EU institutions directly, but also to the public from autumn on. And that is the moment where we will, once we have that joint statement, we will try to outreach to other actors, particular cities, to sign also that joint statement, to get a lot of cities hopefully on board with that joint statement, to raise some power, more power, get some backing to that joint statement. And luckily, in the end, as I said, we don't have own financial resources within the IASH. We don't have a membership fee, and we don't have staff. But luckily, within this Cities for Refugees project, which is organizing this event today, we received EU funding, which allows us to meet also to meet in person, to have meetings, or to set up conferences like this. And so we do have some financial means for 2 years for some meetings at least, but we had to apply for those. But luckily we did, and we received that money.
Thank you so much, Janne. So now we know a bit more the goals and the objectives, and actually the current work of the International Alliance of Safe Harbors. And we all keep you updated on the process because, as you mentioned, Janne, we are looking for allies as well in civil society organizations, but also especially city administration that will back these Palermo statements that we kind of adapt to the current situation in Europe. So thank you all for your input. It's already 4:11. So we're gonna get to our next part of the event, which is now including everyone, everyone who's participating. All the audience will now have the.
I see my.
Yes, we can hear you.
My image is frozen, but okay. Right. So yeah, we had a really nice discussion. The atmosphere was very familiar because we more or less know each other from our work in from the City to the City, IASH, and Cities for Refugees project. So we had a small round of introductions, and we addressed some points, but the subject that we are dealing with today, which is the connection between civil society and local administrations and administrations in general, we touched upon with a very concrete example that is right now happening in Italy. And that was introduced to us by Allegra from Italy Must Act, who is now in the beginning of an articulation phase of an Italian national network. This Italian national network is being actually created, or I don't know how to say this, brought to be directly with in collaboration with the civil society organizations from Italy. So they are planning to get together in a format that's called Table for Asylum and Migration. It is very good news for us as from the City to the City to know that we can probably count on Italian municipalities in the rest of the process that we have with the project, Cities for Refugees projects, because we have many events. Marta will talk about them later in the closing remarks. But I will just mention one that is an event in Brussels with European Union actors, bringing them together with local representatives. In that sense, the articulation happening right now in Italy, which is an ideal case for us, and is also a bit similar to the process that happened in France with Anvita, and in general in Europe with From the City to the City and IASH. There is the participation and actually the impulse from the civil society to create this network, also as a reaction to the extreme right-wing government in in their national government. So the whole thing came to be after the decree of the central government to make the life of sea rescue organizations more difficult, but not only that, also their national integration programs. So we see in this articulation a new step for us to have Italy represented by one or two or some municipalities representing their own national network. So that on the collaboration between civil society and institutions. We didn't talk in general abstractly about it. We just talked about this case that Allegra shared with us. And then we also talked about this discourse that is now really being mainstreamed, that is about making people's perception, society's perception, going towards the most conservative sides of the political spectrum, which is the old we are full, nobody else can come in because we have a housing problem, and stuff that kind of leaves the perception in the public opinion that it's migrants' fault that we don't have for everyone. And we talked about it in a way that it's like how to address this or how to counter this discursive argument that is being developed and unfortunately bought by a lot of societies, or a big part of them. And Claudia mentioned, for example, one movement that there was in Germany called Ungeteilt. That was a cross-sector movement addressing many issues and basically giving out the image and also the will of a society that is united and undivided. Ungeteilt is undivided in German. So we talked a little bit about the need maybe for us to connect cross-sectorally with other movements, housing movement and ecological movements, that are unfortunately also being criminalized. The ecologists in Germany and France are being criminalized now. So there is a clear authoritarian phase that we are starting to not starting, but like feeling it more intensely now. And the cross-sectoral perspective would be something to explore. And I finish with that.
Thank you, Tiago. So I put as two inputs this new Italian network that is highly interesting for everyone here at the table. And the second input would be the cross-sectional discourse of to have a counter narrative on the ongoing discourse shift. Interesting thoughts, Tiago. Thank you so much. So I would move on to the next breakout room, that is Jana. And I already see you put the 3 statements. And please, Jana, share what has been talked about and discussed about in your breakout room.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks to the vivid discussion and inputs in the breakout session, to the colleagues and participants. So we concentrated mainly on the overall topic, participation between civil society and administration, and thought about what angles should we consider which might not have been considered today. So one point which was raised was attention. Not all refugees and migrant groups are organized the same way. make sure as city administration not only to not to listen to the loudest civil society organizations. So it's a question of visibility. And this was raised in the context of the refugees from Ukraine coming in larger numbers, which also made it probably easier for them to organize in bigger numbers and becoming very visible. This is also holds true for Berlin, at least. This was not raised by me, but it also holds true for Berlin. So the impression was they very organized, and the participatory process was initiated very fast. While other groups might be here, or groups of refugees, migrants from other countries, different contexts, might be here, might have been living here for a longer time, but have not been listened to because they don't have the access. They didn't organize this in this and that way. So as an administration, we also have to keep in mind how to approach them. Secondly, support civil society organizations, city administration to learn about each other. The perspectives might be different, and this can also be, we didn't tackle that, but institutionalized. There could be ways how to do it, and to support this actively and to promote dialogue. So one colleague said, and Moshe, maybe you can't, please skip in if you want, but that this also particularly holds true for the cooperation with undocumented migrants, because there's a lot of reluctance and hesitation to do that in administration because also for legal issues, but how to cope with that and how to promote this dialogue because it's so important. And thirdly, concentrate and consider the skills of migrants and refugees in this whole dialogue. I took from this thought, first of all, look at the skills the people bring with them on their own, in the cooperation with them, and not to have this power perspective only, but to respect your cooperation partners with their views and skills, but also to shape the narrative by promoting the cooperation and participation and making it visible.
Thank you, Jana. That was quite clear and very precise on the timing. I'm impressed. Amazing. Like, I think as keyword, I put the visibility, the learning from each other. I think it's a very interesting and important aspect to really have this most famous eye level that we're always trying to talk about. And the same goes with really considering the skills and the qualifications that already are there. Amazing. So Solène, I believe you also had one of the breakout rooms. So please, Solène, maybe give us all a short introduction of whom you're representing here today, because I think we haven't had the chance to hear you speak, so everyone knows how you come about to be one of the moderators. Thank you, Solène.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Lisa. My name is Solène de Chavigny, and I am working with Lia Baron from Anvita, which is an association, the organization that just had an intervention just before. But unfortunately, my colleague had to leave, so I replace her here. So that's why I am one of the moderators. In our breakout room, we mainly discussed a very specific context of the welcoming policies implemented last year in Europe during the conflict in Ukraine and the arrival of Ukraine refugees. And we insisted on the discriminatory and racist nature of the different standards of policies that have been implemented, where Ukrainians had much easier access to rights in terms of housing, jobs, etc., while the other migrants did not and still don't. And so we insisted on the how the organizations were shocked and angry about this double standards, even if this was, this was a good thing for Ukrainian people, but the double standards were really frightening. And so so yeah, and it could be the second statement, because we then discussed the extent to which civil society organizations and the administration, either local or national ones, were able or not to cooperate during this period, in particular in terms of denouncing and advocating this double standard. And so we highlighted the fact that this capacity to cooperate or not depended a lot on the national or national and actually local context. Because, for example, we said we had an example that in Greece, the government let no space, no platform for the organizations to speak up and to say actually anything. It was the organization just had to implement the national policies, and so that this was kind of a limit on the cooperation between LRGs and NGOs, because LRGs could not go too far in the denunciation of what the governments were doing. Instead, in other contexts, municipalities and NGOs could work a bit together to advocate on these double standards and ask for a better cooperation between the national and local context, included NGOs. And yeah, I think that's mainly what we discussed, and I thank the participants who were in my breakout rooms.
Thanks a lot, Soline. So we then move to the last breakout room session moderated by Christian. I think you have quite a few inputs as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marta. We had a very diverse group in the breakout room, from former MEP to artists and civil society. So yeah, very good to have these diverse inputs. And yeah, we came up with actually three statements and one question. One was again, yeah, emphasizing that the constant pressure from civil society is really crucial. I mean, this was mentioned in the meetings before, but it was yeah, important in the group to make this clear again, that this is one of the main points that are important in our work. And then another question was the question was, how do we make public authorities or municipalities accountable? I think it was raised in one of the panels that, of course, municipality can join a network and yeah, sign statements, but how do we as civil society organizations actually make them accountable, that they really act on the demands or on the statements that they sign? Yeah, we could not really answer this question, but yeah, it's important for the ongoing of the project to yeah, go into this into more detail. And then another point was raised that innovative and efficient communication is needed, or communication structures. We raised the topic of especially the cooperation between civil society and municipalities, because very often civil society actors or yeah, people working in organizations are volunteers, so they are, for example, more free in the evening for a meeting. A civil servant is maybe more available during the day because this is the office hours. So very concrete and yeah, concrete problems that should be solved or should be taken into account. So it's not always the super complex policy whatever things. Of course, it's also important, but to really work efficiently together, it's important to yeah, have this in mind as well. And then in the end, we talked about the tactics. So which tactics do we actually use to convince municipalities? And there we shared a broad range of things. In this point, it was also involved that we talked about artistic interventions, for example, especially to reach politicians who are maybe not part of our bubble already. So it's not the traditional protest that maybe a leftist politician would join. But I don't know, a theater play would be something a more conservative politician would join. And this is kind of an icebreaker to actually start getting someone on board. Also very concrete points. But also a bit of a questions like, are there maybe other tactics that we could use in the future? Yeah, there was a quick overview, and yeah, of course, or I think we all are happy to answer questions in the end.
Thank you, Christian. I think it's very interesting to talk about concrete tactics. We've have like this idea of best practice exchange. I think we can learn a lot from each other in the way of how to get the attention of like politicians or other civil society organizations or citizens themselves. It's quite an interesting field. Well, Marta, we have gathered a lot of statements, a lot of questions and input. Of course, as expected, this restriction of 2 statements didn't work, but that's completely fine. And we have them all here on the board. And maybe we can zoom out a bit. But probably we won't be able to read them anyways, but I took a few notes. Marta, is there anything particular that you heard now in these last 20 minutes that you also, as being representing here today a civil society organization, that was brought to your attention, or a thought or a statement that you can relate to?
Yeah, yes, thank you. There are a few things that resonate with me, and I particularly like what when Christian was talking about going through the very practical details that sometimes you don't maybe take them into account, and it's actually, at least from my experience, was what is making sometimes the process is not going as fast as possible. So the tiny example of maybe having different working hours with the cities and activists, that is really often problematic. Or a second thing that was also mentioned is how these different skills that are put into place then get institutionalized and that can be replicated. So within the activist groups, there is often this feeling that it is complicated to follow up into different practices. And this is something that we, from the City to the City, I think we are kind of seeing a different pattern in this sense, because it's a process that it's evolving and it's building up on previous work that it's done. So for the first time, at least in my experience, there you can see a long-term experience in which there is a lot of solidarity from the people that we're tackling, but also from the activists that are, as Nico was saying, putting into the front of the topics we are dealing with. And what makes me hopeful with this kind of moment is that there is really an intention and willingness to cooperate within different structures and within different levels. So yeah, with what regards the Cities4Refugees project, I'm happy to have seen that there's been these many responses to the event and registrants, and that there is actually interest in being part of the work that we are doing. I don't know, from your experience, Lisa, if you can relate to anything else specifically.
Yes, that was one of my thoughts too during out of the panels, because it was raised on different occasion that we are facing a shift. We are facing a shift in discourse and narrative. We see it from the political elections, the changed outcomes, etc. So at the one hand, we are all a bit paralyzed almost, and this event shows today that we are not, like that we can be active, and that this is also a counter, like a consequence, that the more we see this let's say, conservative in a very nice way discourse that is raised, there is also a chance that it can be kind of a wake-up call, and it can generate also an active and a very an active opposition to that narrative that has been created. So, and I mean, and one of this event is in kind of a small part of all this feeling the solidarity across Europe. And so, yeah, so that would be my positive outtake and on the quite radical development that we see all over Europe. And from a more, let's say, administrative point of view, something that was raised also in the different panels that I would be also interested to hear from our panelists and speakers of their experience, because we saw really the different aspects of cooperation. Some were quite institutionalized by law, by councils, and I think in the first panel it was quite clear how much time it takes to establish these institutional structure, and what the advantage is that with the change of government, these structures stay, and even with change of people and etc., still these structures stay. And then on the other hand, I think it was more on the second panel that we heard Lea talking about this very ad hoc cooperation between Anvita and the civil society organization, and that is more fluid, more flexible, and it has a big advantage too. So I would really be interested to hear from our speakers their thoughts on that, and also kind of maybe, of course, there are advantages, disadvantages, but to have like an idea of, is there anything you prefer? Is there anything that you see that is dangerous from the one way to work together? Or so yeah, please, you may take the floor. Marta and me will moderate a bit so that not everyone will speak at the same time. But yes, Tiago, you raised your hand, so please, I would love to hear your input.
Thank you, Lisa and Marta. Okay, yeah, I think like it's a discussion that we didn't have in depth from the city to the city. If we would like to go the way of institutionalizing, we did have discussions about creating an association, for example, because it's really a network that was freely put together, and we don't have a legal personality. About institutionalizing, for example, our work that we do jointly with IAS, I think it all depends on what would the institutionalization bring to begin with. If we would be perceived, because what I see is that we are a sort of an epistemic community. There is a lot of expertise around many different different phases of migration on the ground, and the expertise here does not mean a doctor's degree or anything of the sort, although there are also people that are working on it, that are carrying out very relevant academic research on it that we are connected to. But just the experience on the ground, the experience at sea, all of this, it seems like the perfect scenario to inform policies. But of course, this is not the way the European Commission chose to, not the actors the European Commission chose to consult for their policies. And I wonder if an institutionalization of these efforts could make the perception shift towards a more official epistemic community, or however one would like to call it. So just as a thought provocation.
Thank you. Nikos, please, it's your floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me? You please,
yes, we can. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Great. So one point I wanted to raise is the importance of restoring the relationship between civil society organizations and the non-organized, non-institutionalized civil society. We are talking a lot about building our relationships with power, with institutions. At the same time, we need to spend a lot of energy and effort in order to rebuild or restore or just build the relationships with the grassroots. In the case of Athens, for instance, in Greece, to a large extent, these relationships are not good, are not peaceful. There is a lot of negativity and a lot of sometimes lack of trust. Thank you. This is the word I'm looking for. A lot of mistrust. Building on this trust would improve, would increase, enhance our power, and our community and our capacity to organize communities and act effectively.
Nikos, we lost you, I think.
I just finished.
Okay, good.
Could you mute me, please, because I'm...
Of course. Thank you, Nikos. Honestly, that's a very interesting part. And I think that's something that goes into in the realm of visibility. I mean, it's a whole, like, in this idea of like who does city administration talk to someone who's established, but who doesn't they talk, who is not included. And so the non-organized, the grassroots, of course, it's and it is as valid and as important to include. But I think it's a very interesting subject to think about. Yes, any other input on that idea, formalized, institutionalized, please, or if you have any other thought that came up in the discussion. Yes, Christian.
Yeah, it goes a little bit in the direction. I wanted to talk a bit about money, because especially for us as civil society organizations, it's a crucial point, because I think most of us are in kind of precarious situations, either because we only have very short contracts or times for our work contracts, or a very low salary. So this is not a situation which makes our work sustainable. I mean, one learning over time was that we initiate and we trigger things. We are not the project managers for city networks, for example. This is why we are so happy that, for example, the city of Berlin or other cities have people who have timeshares to work on this. But we had a phase in our work where we were like, okay, now we for a short period of time we can put a lot of work in it, but in general we don't have the capacities, because we don't have the money to do this full time. And especially after the Russian full-scale attack on Ukraine started, and yeah, we see a massive drop in donations. This is of course affecting us directly, but more affecting foundations that we get funded through. So foundations, of course, they live from donations, and we apply for grants at foundations, and they say, sorry, we cannot give you any money because we don't receive any money anymore because the rise of living costs. And this is to think about how can we make this stable in whatever kind of cooperation we talk here, bigger cities or networks or individual civil society organizations. And this is a very crucial point that we have to take into account. I don't want to complain here, but I think it's a very, very important and crucial point, because this is what makes our work sustainable in the end. And it's not about everyone has to be paid, but the key positions, they have to be paid. Also to tackle this point that we work in the same hours than civil servants, for example.
Yes, Christian, very important point. It's a whole thing, no? It's like we try to point at something and then something else comes up. It really, yeah. So Len, you raised your hand. Please go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to react on what have just been said. For the Envita perspective, so as my colleague just said before, we have kind of a specific structure so that we are an association with the proper existence, but in the same time, the cities are in our organization, kind of on our hierarchy organizations. So we are, of course, thanks to this organization, we are an institutionalized organization. And I think in our case, it allowed us to be also consulted and heard by the government. Of course, it took times, and I mean, we are not still the first. We are not in a close cooperation with the state, of course, now. But still, I think as we have this kind of structure, it has helped us. And also, just on what Christian just said, also on the financial perspective. So the Envita has some salaries, which, for example, I am one of them. So yeah, that was just a point that I wanted to share. And another point was on what has just been shared by Nikos on the also non-institutionalized organizations. And from our Envita's perspective, we are really trying to work both with for example, big and national and international NGOs, but also really local, in France we said collective, like just a group of individuals which do not have legal existence yet, or maybe they will never have some because they don't want one. And so as Envita, we really try to work with different kind of organization, and it's also an advice that we try to say to cities that it's really great that they work with big organizations that they have in their territories, but they also have to talk to and to cooperate with other kind of organization, even the ones that they are not really used to work with. So yeah, that was just one point.
Thank you, Soline. We've heard from the moderators of the breakout rooms panels, but we would also like to hear from the participants directly. So I see already some hands up. Allegra, if you want to come in. And I think we can also unpin the speakers now, Sima, so we can see everyone.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hi. Yeah, very nice to meet you all. I'm Allegra from Italy Mastax, so the Italian branch of Europe Mastax, which is here represented by Christian. And yeah, I just wanted to add something on the point that was made by Tiago that we touched upon in our discussion group on Italy. Yet the news about this potential alliance is very new, so it's still something that is not let's say it's going a bit under the radar, so we don't know whether this will happen or not. So I also wanted to share the fact that it's something that could happen, and we really hope that this will happen. And for this reason, I just wanted to thank you for this really full presentation that you had, because it was very important also for me to get to know some of the representatives of the cities, also because there might be the chance to invite representatives of IASH in events that we might organize in Italy, to then see whether this potential new alliance of welcoming cities that will be created, if it will be created, could also be joining IASH. So there will also be a representation of Italian cities. So let's hope for this, and I hope to get in contact with some of you in the future for an alliance also with Italy. Thank you.
Thank you, Allegra. Jurica?
I just wanted to say, from the perspective of the city, that often we discuss about this, the city must do this, the city must do that. And yes, but sometimes I think you all know this, but it's important to mention that it's not just like, okay, me and my boss, we want to do this in the city, we'll do that. We often have a few months of negotiating with other colleagues from the city with higher, then we can do something. And in regards to the financial situation, we don't also have safe money for our project. We have that for this year, so we don't know what will be in the next year. So, but in the regards of the institutionalization of this cooperation, it's good for, like the colleague from the Berlin said, it's good because if our government changes, this will stay. We are trying to make something different, like a long-term strategy, which will be like a commitment for the next few governments, but I don't think we will. I'm not sure we will make it this year, maybe in 2 or 3 years. I think that's better way, because if we try to institutionalize, and that's just my personal opinion, the cooperation with the CSOs, I think that will in some way, I don't know how to say this, it will put them in one box with us. I think it's better that they are completely free from us, and then we can, if there is political will, it will be done. If there isn't political will, some sort of institutionalization won't mean anything. That's at least from my perspective, and from my from the few years that I'm working on this. That's it.
Thanks a lot, Jurica. Lisa?
Yes, actually, Jurica, thank you so much for this city perspective. I think that's also interesting and important to keep that in mind. And that also brings me to a thought that I have in these cooperation formats of the different roles that we have, and that I think it's smart to be aware of, because it explains a lot. And you also mentioned in the very beginning, Jurica, the different roles and the different functions. And like the role, like I always tell the partners that I've met so far, we like, if we wouldn't have the civil society organization that asks for the maximum, us as city administration, we won't have anything to come forward with. It's you who brings us it, and then we can frame it and pack it and do it something with it to bring it to the attention to our political hierarchies, etc. So I think it's something. With this in mind, I think it is something that we can all work very comfortably together to understand, yes, please go in, do the maximum, ask for everything you want, and then it can be filtered and sorted, and we can check what is possible. And I think with this in mind, with these two different roles, a corporation can be very successful and fruitful. But that's why it's so important to have you, to push for that, and to have this role, and to really ask the utopia that we all want to live in.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Laura Collini?
Hello. Hello, and nice to see you again. And thank you for organizing this event, which is very interesting. I want to reflect on two things. The first one on the institutionalization. I think that from city to city, it has completely different questions compared to Anvita, for instance, because you know that it's the legislation, you're attached to the French system, and from city to city, it will require also a lot of internal discussion whether it makes sense and in which country do you connect from city to city. The idea was really to create a pan-European approach. And not that is really attached to one single state. Also, there is a majority of some over others. So that's, I think, I leave it open, the question of reflection. Another thing that I wanted also to share is a reflection that I don't know how much was taken into consideration, But to get the grip on certain public administration, I think we need to spend more time to connect our social movements, our work, which is, an additional work to do that in face of what Krisha was saying. We really need to connect to the social movement working on climate change even more. Municipalities have now a lot of funding from the RRF and from other, European funding anyway, for environmental and climate change aspects. So if we really connect the discourse, what we are doing around migration, what we want to achieve around migration, obviously having a right-based approach, but linking and creating coalition also with the aspects of environmental aspects, I think will be an additional drive for cities to some cities at least to be collaborating with us. That's just I wanted to drop this aspect into the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I think this is something that Thiago mentioned, this cross-sectional movements, this connecting it with other issues. I think it's something very interesting to look more into. Janne, yes, you raised your hand.
Thank you to all the panelists and those who raised their words. Really popping up a lot of thoughts and questions, and I would like to discuss it more, and I need to find space in my head to structure my question now. Not question, but my one thought at least. So yes, I see the ideal of cooperation, participation, and I would like to exemplify taking your thoughts, Lisa, and your statement pro cooperation and the role civil society organizations should play, then taking Jurica's thoughts about the obstacles the administration plays. So maybe I would squeeze in the middle and vote for this understanding aspect, that it is good, that it is prerequisite to think that you can live with this utopia, that everyone can deal with civil society actors being very loud, maybe sometimes aggressive, having very strong moral positions, sticking to them, even if you tell them there are hurdles, something we cannot change, and so on. But sticking, being sticking to that and making you responsible. So that can be annoying, and you have to, or stressful even, and you have to know how to deal with that. And that's what I'm promoting. So I like the idea which came up in our session to actually have some kind of, not training, but kind of awareness and sensitivity raising on each side. What are the obstacles? What are the possibilities? And yes, this again comes with a strategic move by the civil society actors also, whether they want this, whether they want to get into all this cooperation, because it comes also maybe with some restraints for them, because they can also be made accountable, some moral issues, because some things they might not like their cooperation partners do, and so on. So yes, it is a strategic question on both sides. But if you decide to do that, and I think Nikos put it nicely in his speech, that they do it strategically. They decided to actually do it and reflect on the problems, but also possibilities which come with them. And I think this is important, and maybe we could elaborate later on, or maybe some of this the other participants could share if they know of good examples where actually civil society and cities came together to talk about how to work, collaborate together, and not just think everyone knows how to do it.
I don't know if there are any reactions to that. Or any last minute contributions. If not, we are right into the timing of the event. We were hoping to close the plenary by 5:50, which is 1 minute to. If there are no further comments, I think we can wrap up the plenary. Okay, we don't want to take also much time from your time, but we wanted to thank you again, and our speakers, all of you, for your contributions to this event today and for staying until the end. And we hope you found it useful and interesting. In the next month, by July, we will send you by email the email you have registered with the documentation and outcomes of the event. So together with a short report, the mural board, and also a short questionnaire on the next steps of the project to get further input from you and understand if there are further ways to cooperate with you as part of the project, as we were saying at the beginning. And those of you who accepted to register to the newsletter will also receive further information about the next dates and public events of the project. Maybe we'll see some of you in the public actions of the project over the next year. So we hope to keep in touch and see you soon, and wishing you a very nice evening. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our tech host for holding everything together as well.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you very
Ciao.
much.
Thank you. Bye.